There are questions that do not simply challenge what we believe. They challenge the timeline in which we believe it. They confront the silent assumption that human history is a straight, traceable line, beginning in the recent past and stretching cleanly into the future. But when we look deeper into Earth's crust, into those vast geological layers laid down hundreds of millions of years before the first dinosaurs walked the planet, we encounter something unexpected. A void so profound, so unaccounted for, that it destabilizes our entire sense of continuity. A void that raises an unsettling possibility. If Earth has erased entire worlds of life before, worlds for which no fossils remain and no records could ever survive, then what else might have vanished, lost in the churn of continents and oceans long before our species appeared? This question matters because it reframes another mystery we think we understand, the certainty we assign to the moon landing. The event is iconic, monumental, declared as one of humanity's defining achievements. And yet, certainty itself is a fragile construct. Even the clearest photograph, the most carefully archived transmission, depends on the continuity of memory, trust, and historical interpretation. And if Earth itself cannot preserve the full truth of its own pre-dinosaur past, how can any civilization be absolutely certain of something as distant, as symbolically charged, and as politically entangled as the first journey to the moon? This is not a denial. It is a question, a philosophical tension, a recognition that proofs, no matter how compelling, exist in a world where evidence can be lost, altered, misread, or reinterpreted across cycles of time. The deeper we go into paleontology, planetary science, and the anomalies buried in primordial rock, the more the moon mission begins to feel less like a settled event and more like a lens, a way of examining our assumptions about truth and the civilizations that came before us. Imagine a world older than the dinosaurs. A world of complex ecosystems, shifting climates, and perhaps even intelligent forms of life that emerged and vanished long before the first reptilian giant took its steps across Triassic landscapes. We have no definitive proof such civilizations existed. But absence of evidence in geological terms is not evidence of absence. Entire continents have sunk, oceans have expanded and retreated, mountain ranges have risen and dissolved. Whatever lived in those unrecorded epochs would have been crushed, melted, or scattered by forces indifferent to memory. Now consider the symbolic tension. We claim certainty about a mission to another world only decades old, while the Earth beneath us hides billions of years of missing chapters. The paradox grows sharper when we revisit the particular details conspiracy theorists insist NASA cannot explain. Not to validate them, but to understand the psychological gravity behind them. Because those so-called impossible details often arise from deeper human anxieties, not about the moon itself, but about the fragility of knowledge and the vulnerability of history. As the camera glides over eroded valleys, ancient coastlines, and the mineral signatures of forgotten eons, a realization takes shape. The skepticism surrounding the moon landing is not just about rockets, shadows, or telemetry. It is about the discomfort of recognizing that we stand on a planet whose story we barely comprehend. A planet that may have hosted civilizations erased so thoroughly that even their myths have turned to dust. And so the question becomes unavoidable. If our own world has hidden its past with such ruthless efficiency, how can we claim absolute certainty about any event whose proof must travel through fragile channels of documentation, politics, and human interpretation? This is where our exploration begins. At the crossroads of paleogeology, forgotten epochs, skeptical inquiry, and the possibility that the truths we cling to are more transient than we dare to acknowledge. In every direction beneath our feet lies a story we cannot fully read. The sedimentary layers, the metamorphic folds, the igneous intrusions. Each is a page written by pressure, heat, erosion, and continental drift. Yet for all their vastness, these pages are incomplete. The geological record is not an archive. It is a battlefield where evidence is buried, crushed, uplifted, reduced, and rewritten over spans of time so immense that even the concept of memory becomes meaningless. This silence, the absence of preserved civilizations before recognized life forms, forms the conceptual backbone of every reinterpretative theory about Earth's forgotten epochs. To understand why, we must step far back from the familiar narrative. Much of what we call deep time rests upon inference, not certainty. Fossils appear in certain strata, vanish in others, and whole eras remain devoid of any organic imprint. Traditional science interprets these voids as periods with limited fossilization conditions. But a more speculative lens suggests something more provocative. What if the Earth has passed through entire cycles of complexity that left no trace because the planet itself destroys evidence through its own geological processes? This is the first point that fuels reinterpretative theories. Earth is not static. It is a dynamic system where oceans expand and retract, where tectonic plates collide and consume one another, and where entire continents disintegrate. The geological recycling mechanism known as subduction is not subtle. It drags the surface of the planet into the mantle, obliterating anything built upon it. If a civilization had risen 100 million years before the dinosaurs, whether biological, mechanical, or something beyond both, it is not only plausible, but likely that the ruins of its existence would never survive. This foundational uncertainty about our own world's prehistory becomes deeply relevant when placed against the idea of absolute certainty surrounding the moon landing, because while NASA's mission happened within living memory, the philosophical tension lies not in the event itself, but in the structures of certainty that surround it. If Earth can erase millennia with a single tectonic shift, can it not also refract, distort, or complicate far more recent truths through the equally shifting layers of human politics, culture, and perception? This is where conspiracy theorists often anchor their claims, not purely in technical anomalies, but in the broader notion that institutions like geological forces can shape narratives, suppress inconsistencies, or interpret evidence in ways that align with their goals. And when the geological record demonstrates, again and again, that even physical reality can be rewritten across time, the psychological parallel becomes powerful. It is not about proving a conspiracy. It is about understanding why the concept of definitive, unquestionable proof feels fragile within the context of Earth's own forgotten history. The paradox grows even sharper when we consider the scale of time. Humanity has existed for a geological instant. Our entire recorded history occupies less than a blink within Earth's 4.5 billion years. The dinosaurs ruled for more than 150 million years, and even their remains are fragmentary, incomplete, and riddled with interpretive gaps. What then of anything that may have existed before them? The deeper we go, the more the rock layers transform. Heat and pressure erase the possibility of stable artifacts. The first half of Earth's existence is almost devoid of fossil evidence, not because nothing lived, but because the planet had not yet developed the stability needed to preserve it. This is the environment in which reinterpretative theories thrive, not from a dismissal of science, but from the recognition that the physical world does not guarantee preservation or clarity. The moon landing becomes a symbolic case study. It stands not as a questioned event, but as a mirror reflecting our discomfort with the limits of knowledge. Because if entire epochs of Earth's life can vanish without a trace, then the certainty we place on any human achievement becomes, by comparison, philosophical rather than absolute. This chapter sets the stage for deeper exploration. The geological silence is not merely a backdrop, it is a key to understanding why skepticism persists and why the question of certainty about the moon, about the past, about ourselves, remains open. The human mind is drawn to gaps. It is wired to notice absences, anomalies, and inconsistencies, not merely for survival, but as a mechanism to construct meaning from uncertainty. In the same way that ancient humans may have feared unseen predators lurking beyond the horizon, modern observers instinctively search for cracks in narratives that appear too complete, too polished, or too easily accepted. This cognitive pattern is the underlying engine of every reinterpretative theory, particularly those claiming that certain aspects of the moon landing are impossible. These claims are never purely about technical detail. The trajectory of light across lunar regolith, the behavior of dust beneath a module, the transmission of signals across space, all are subjects of intense scrutiny. Yet the fascination does not arise solely from physics. It emerges from the human discomfort with certainty. Skepticism is often a mirror reflecting deeper anxieties. The realization that even within our lifetimes, events can be misrepresented, misremembered, or filtered through layers of authority, intent, and interpretation. The connection to Earth's forgotten pre-dinosaur civilizations amplifies this phenomenon. Consider a hypothetical civilization that existed long before fossilization became a reliable archive. Its traces might have been obliterated by tectonic upheaval, volcanic flows, or oceanic subduction. Humans cannot access their history. Their presence exists only as speculation, inferred from the gaps between the stones. Similarly, the moon landing is filtered through archives, photographs, telemetry data, and collective memory. Every skeptic intuitively senses the same fragility, the possibility that our proofs are incomplete, that evidence, even when abundant, cannot entirely dispel doubt. Psychologists identify this as the information gap hypothesis. Humans experience tension when confronted with partial knowledge, and this tension motivates curiosity, investigation, and sometimes the creation of alternative narratives. Skepticism thrives in this interstitial space between the known and the unknowable. Conspiracy theories, particularly those asserting that some details are impossible, are not merely falsehoods. They are interpretive exercises in filling voids, in asserting agency over gaps where certainty fails. The moon landing, then, becomes a perfect canvas. Its iconic status, coupled with the inherent complexity of space travel, creates fertile ground for doubt. Observers instinctively compare the lunar record, a single highly mediated event, with Earth's deep time silence, where entire civilizations may have vanished without leaving a trace. The contrast is profound. The moon mission is exhaustively documented, yet psychological mechanisms drive some to insist on anomalies. Prehistoric silence offers a compelling metaphor, reinforcing the idea that absolute proof is a human aspiration, not an automatic property of events themselves. This pattern is reinforced culturally. Humans have long used myth and story to navigate the unknown. Every lost civilization in Earth's distant past is a reminder that absence of evidence is not absence of possibility. In parallel, modern skepticism interprets the impossible details of space missions as potential evidence of narrative gaps, inconsistencies, or deliberate concealment. It is a natural extension of our species' tendency to search for patterns, to impose coherence on incompleteness, and to question events that exceed ordinary comprehension. Yet this chapter does not aim to validate the skepticism itself. It aims to illuminate its origins, its emotional resonance, and its philosophical significance. The impossible details are not inherently dangerous. They are lenses through which we explore the tension between evidence, memory, and belief. By understanding the psychology behind the fixation on the moon landing's supposed anomalies, we can see how skepticism functions as a broader human response to the unknown, a response equally applicable to the vanished civilizations buried beneath Earth's ancient strata. In this light, the moon mission becomes more than a historical event. It becomes a mirror, reflecting humanity's ongoing struggle with certainty. Just as tectonic forces have obliterated entire epochs, so too does time, perspective, and cognition blur the edges of truth. The mind seeks to recover control, to reconstruct coherence, and to insist that some details must be impossible when evidence alone cannot fully satisfy its need for narrative completeness. In the corridors of modern skepticism, the moon landing is often dissected not for its historical reality, but for its apparent anomalies, those details labeled impossible by observers who sense a deeper tension between evidence and belief. Shadows that diverge, dust that floats differently than expected, footprints that persist in conditions assumed hostile, and the silence of stars in photographs, all of these have been catalogued, scrutinized, and debated. Yet the fascination lies less in the physics and more in the symbolism. Each anomaly functions as a placeholder for uncertainty, a psychological foothold in a world where certainty is fleeting. To understand this, one must return to the metaphorical terrain of Earth's pre-dinosaur civilizations. Imagine a species that rose, flourished, and disappeared long before the first reptilian giants. No fossils survive. No written language remains. Only the geological substrata hint at their passage in fractures, mineral deposits, or sedimentary anomalies. In that silence, our mind invents hypotheses, constructs narratives, and searches for meaning. We do the same with the moon landing. Each impossible detail becomes a subtle marker, a trace of doubt projected onto a vast and incompletely understood context. Consider the lunar shadows. Photographers and physicists explain them through complex interactions of uneven terrain and sunlight scattering. But to the mind attuned to gaps, the inconsistency mirrors the absence of pre-dinosaur civilizations in Earth's layers. A visual sign that perfection is never guaranteed, that the world often resists the clarity we demand. Likewise, the missing stars are less an error than a reflection of our limitations, much like the voids between ancient epochs, gaps where we might wish for certainty, but are confronted instead with the ineffable. Even the trajectories of lunar dust, disturbed by the module's descent, function as a metaphor. Dust clings, drifts, and settles in patterns that may seem counterintuitive. Scientific explanation exists, but the perception of the impossible persists. Here one sees the resonance with deep-time enigmas. Materials shift, layers compress, and evidence is forever transformed by natural forces beyond comprehension. Our ancestors, or their hypothetical pre-dinosaur predecessors, might have experienced the same frustrations with understanding, interpreting, and trusting the fragments of reality that survived. The patterns of communication across the void between Earth and the Moon provide another illustration. Signals traverse thousands of kilometers, reflecting off or interacting with space weather, cosmic radiation, and human technology. Errors or delays are often explained through physics, yet they are interpreted as proof of impossibility by those conditioned to question certainty. The parallel to Earth's lost civilizations is striking. Just as ancient life may have arisen and vanished with no trace, our signals are filtered through systems that inevitably distort, misalign, or misrepresent the original event. By framing these details as interpretive markers rather than literal evidence of deception, we see their function within a larger philosophical inquiry. They are not challenges to fact, but invitations to explore the boundaries of knowledge. Like fossils compressed beyond recognition, like tectonic upheavals that consume entire histories, the anomalies encourage reflection on the limitations of human perception, the fragility of narrative, and the ephemeral nature of proof itself. In this light, the moon mission is more than a historical or technical milestone. It becomes a mirror of human cognition, a lens through which we confront the same uncertainties that have defined our understanding of Earth since the first sediment hardened into rock. Skeptical interpretations of impossible details are not merely critiques. They are echoes of our species' deep fascination with absence, loss, and the mysteries that survive only as questions. Each anomaly, then, is a signpost pointing toward a broader contemplation. If entire civilizations could vanish before the age of dinosaurs, what does the imperfection of our records, our evidence, and even our memories reveal about the events we hold as absolute? The tension between certainty and the unknowable becomes the very terrain upon which this story unfolds. The lunar paradox, how the moon reflects Earth's forgotten history. From the surface of the moon, the Earth appears as a distant, fragile orb, vivid, alive, yet profoundly inaccessible. It is a silent observer, a mirror suspended in darkness, reflecting the light of the sun, and paradoxically, the shadows of our own understanding. For centuries, humanity has sought in this satellite a symbol of conquest, knowledge, and progress. And yet, when viewed through the lens of deep-time skepticism, the moon becomes something different. A canvas on which the fragility of certainty, the limitations of proof, and the echoes of Earth's erased civilizations are projected. Consider the nature of the moon itself. Its surface is a record of billions of years of cosmic bombardment, untouched by the tectonic cycles and erosive forces that have consumed so much of our planet's history. Craters overlap, lava plains hardened into permanence, and minerals crystallized in silence. In contrast to Earth, where entire continents and potential civilizations have disappeared without a trace, the moon preserves its history with brutal clarity. And yet, despite this apparent permanence, the narratives of humans' lunar visits remain vulnerable to skepticism and reinterpretation. This is the lunar paradox. permanence of record does not guarantee permanence of belief. The parallels to Earth's deep time mysteries are striking. In imagining civilizations before the dinosaurs, we confront a planet where the evidence has been almost entirely erased. No written records survive, no constructed monuments remain. Our knowledge is reconstructed from fragments, patterns in rock, isotopic signatures, and anomalous mineral deposits. These are hints, not proofs. The moon landing, by contrast, is exhaustively documented, yet the human mind treats the anomalies, the unexplained nuances, and the unresolvable perceptions with the same weight as the fragments left by vanished earthly epochs. Skepticism thrives not where evidence is weak, but where understanding is incomplete or filtered through interpretive frameworks. In this sense, the moon acts as both a mirror and a contrast. It is the closest humanity has to a preserved archive, yet the doubts surrounding it reveal the cognitive processes that have always confronted us with our planet's erased histories. Shadows that seem inconsistent, dust that defies expectation, transmissions that are subtly distorted. These anomalies are akin to the traces left by pre-dinosaur civilizations, faint, ambiguous, interpretable, and persistent enough to provoke reflection. They are reminders that observation alone cannot replace the act of interpretation, that certainty is as much a mental construct as it is a function of evidence. The paradox deepens when we consider the human need for narrative coherence. Skepticism of the moon landing is less about denying technology or physics than about grappling with the fragility of certainty. It is a response to awareness that even the most documented events can be filtered through human perception, memory, and authority. And just as Earth's geological processes erase and reconstruct entire epochs, human cognition reshapes perception and meaning, generating anomalies that demand explanation, often beyond the purely technical. Through this lens, the moon becomes a philosophical device, a satellite that not only charts celestial distances, but also maps the interstitial spaces of doubt, imagination, and interpretation. Its permanence emphasizes the impermanence of belief. Its clarity highlights the opacity of human understanding. And when juxtaposed with the vanished civilizations of pre-dinosaur Earth, it teaches a lesson both humbling and profound. That evidence can be abundant, yet human certainty remains provisional, always subject to the erosion of context, interpretation, and time itself. In the next chapter, we will explore how the impossibility of absolute proof arises not from anomalies themselves, but from the very structure of knowledge, memory, and trust, both in our distant past and in the delicate archive of our lunar ventures. Absolute proof is an idea that comforts the mind, but eludes the cosmos. Across Earth's vast history, countless layers of life and civilization have been created, consumed, and obliterated, leaving only hints of existence. Rocks tell stories, fossils whisper fragments, and isotopes carry signatures of what once was. Yet certainty, unquestionable, irrefutable proof, is almost never granted. It is within this context that the moon landing, often held as a paragon of human achievement, is reconsidered through a lens of philosophical skepticism. To frame this, we must confront the limits of knowledge. Scientific observation provides evidence, but evidence is always mediated, filtered through instruments, interpreted by minds, and communicated across time and space. The moon mission is meticulously documented, telemetry logs, photographs, and samples. But interpretation is never neutral. Even the most precise instruments are designed by human intention, and every record is vulnerable to the limits of perception, error, and selective emphasis. When the stakes are existential, when a society seeks to define its place in the universe, doubt naturally emerges. This is where the shadow of pre-dinosaur civilizations offers resonance. Consider that entire ecosystems and potential intelligent forms could have existed hundreds of millions of years ago, only to vanish under tectonic and erosive forces. The planet itself does not preserve memory reliably. Absence of evidence does not equal evidence of absence. This stark reality forces a reevaluation of how certainty is constructed, both for epochs we cannot access and for events only decades past. The moon landing, by contrast, exists in a fully accessible time frame, Yet the psychological and philosophical forces at play are surprisingly similar. Skeptics often focus on specific anomalies, claiming them impossible, inexplicable, or inconsistent. But these are less about the events themselves than about the inherent tension between observation and belief. Shadows diverge, dust behaves unpredictably, and signals across space carry noise. Each represents a reminder that even with abundant documentation, the human mind can perceive incompleteness or contradiction. Absolute proof becomes an aspirational construct rather than a guaranteed reality. This inquiry also challenges the notion of temporal proximity as a guarantee of certainty. Humanity's record, brief as it is, already demonstrates fragility. Written documents fade, digital files corrupt, and memory is imperfect. If events from mere decades ago are interpreted with skepticism, how much more tenuous is the claim of knowing anything about civilizations buried beneath hundreds of millions of years of rock? The lesson is clear. The impossibility of absolute proof is not confined to the distant past. It permeates the very structure of cognition, evidence, and trust. In this chapter, we confront the paradox. We live in an era capable of extraordinary achievement, yet our understanding remains provisional. The moon landing becomes both a testament to human ingenuity and a case study in epistemological humility. It reminds us that the perception of anomalies, the questioning of narratives, and the construction of doubt are not inherently errors. They are reflections of the conditions under which knowledge is always mediated, interpreted, and sometimes lost. The philosophical inquiry extends beyond technology or politics. It touches on the essence of time, memory, and existence. Just as Earth erases civilizations before the dinosaurs, human cognition selectively preserves and interprets what survives. Skepticism arises naturally, not from denial, but from the recognition that certainty is conditional. Even the most celebrated events, those held up as indisputable, are ultimately experienced, remembered, and understood through the imperfect filter of human perception. In the next chapter, we will expand this reflection further, exploring how the echoes of vanished civilizations and deep time uncertainty shape the very act of questioning. We will examine the possibility that the human drive to doubt, to scrutinize, and to interpret anomalies may itself be an inheritance from an Earth whose memory has been violently erased. As we peer into the depths of time, it becomes apparent that skepticism itself may be a legacy of survival. Humanity exists at the tail end of geological epochs, in a world whose memory is largely erased. Oceans have swallowed continents, volcanic eruptions have reshaped landscapes, and tectonic movements have consumed entire chapters of Earth's history. In this context, the human mind has evolved to question, to probe, and to suspect. The act of skepticism, our insistence on testing, re-evaluating, and doubting, is perhaps an echo of cognitive patterns honed over millions of years, attuned to the reality that civilizations, ecosystems, and entire species can vanish without a trace. When applied to the moon landing, this perspective reframes the discussion. The impossible details highlighted by skeptics are not necessarily evidence of deception or failure. They are the manifestations of a deeper cognitive instinct. Humans, conditioned by the silent voids of pre-dinosaur history, are naturally drawn to gaps and inconsistencies. The void itself, whether in rock layers or in archived signals, prompts reflection, anxiety, and, ultimately, inquiry. In essence, skepticism is less a judgment about the moon and more a reflection of how the mind interprets the fragility of existence and memory. Imagine, then, the scale of this cognitive inheritance. Early humans navigated environments where subtle irregularities, unexplained shadows, faint traces, distorted sounds could mean the difference between survival and extinction. Patterns had to be discerned in incomplete data, anomalies had to be questioned, and assumptions had to be challenged constantly. This evolutionary framework amplifies the resonance of lunar skepticism. The mind reacts to what it perceives as anomalies, because across deep time, noticing inconsistencies has been a survival mechanism. Parallel to this is the metaphor of civilizations lost before the dinosaurs. Entire societies, potentially capable of sophisticated construction, art, or understanding, may have risen and fallen, leaving no direct trace. The planet's memory is selective, and the record is incomplete. When humanity looks skyward, attempting to assert certainty about a singular lunar journey, it does so with a cognitive heritage shaped by an Earth that has obliterated far more than it has preserved. Doubt is not irrational. It is an instinctive recognition that history, even recent history, is mediated, fragile, and incomplete. The moon landing scrutiny also reveals the social dimensions of this inherited skepticism. Communities, authorities, and institutions become part of the interpretive process. Even meticulously recorded events are filtered through layers of trust, culture, and collective perception. Skepticism is reinforced when human narratives intersect with technological and cosmic complexity, producing a tension between what is documented and what is intuitively believable. This interplay mirrors the gaps left by pre-dinosaur epochs. Absence of proof is not absence of reality, yet the mind seeks to fill the void. At this midpoint of our journey, it is worth pausing to recognize the immersive tension this narrative creates. The moon, the vanished civilizations, and the impossible details all converge to illustrate a profound principle. Knowledge is provisional, perception is mediated, and skepticism is both natural and necessary. To navigate these layers of uncertainty is to engage with the very processes that have shaped human thought for millions of years. Here, we invite the viewer to reflect and participate. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the hidden architectures of Earth, the enigmas of deep time, and the enduring mysteries that the moon holds as a mirror for human cognition. Finally, we arrive at the edge of understanding, where the moon hovers as both a testament and a question, and Earth's pre-dinosaur past whispers through strata erased by eons. Here, skepticism reaches its most contemplative form, not as denial, but as recognition of the profound limits inherent in observation, memory, and interpretation. The paradox is clear. We trust evidence, yet even evidence is mediated. We witness achievement, yet the mind seeks anomalies. We preserve records, yet entire civilizations may vanish without trace. Absolute certainty in this framework is not a right or a privilege, but an aspirational construct that may forever elude us. The so-called impossible details of the moon landing, the divergent shadows, the drifting dust, the subtle inconsistencies in transmitted signals, are not simply errors or fabrications. They are invitations. Invitations to reflect on the fragility of knowledge, on the impermanence of evidence, and on the cognitive inheritance shaped by a world that erases without warning. They remind us that human understanding, no matter how sophisticated, is always provisional, always contingent upon the survival of context, memory, and interpretation. As we contemplate Earth's forgotten epochs, the lesson deepens. Pre-dinosaur civilizations, if they existed, left behind only whispers in stone, anomalies in sediment, and echoes in isotopic signatures. Entire chapters of life, intelligence, and perhaps culture have been erased, swallowed by oceans, magma, and tectonics. Yet the human mind seeks patterns, reconstructs narratives, and clings to coherence. In examining the moon landing through this lens, we recognize a striking symmetry. Both the ancient Earth and the modern archive of human endeavor challenge our desire for certainty. Both reveal the same vulnerability. Memory and proof are ephemeral, filtered through layers of time and perception. This final reflection calls us to humility and wonder. To question does not diminish achievement, it elevates comprehension. To doubt is not to reject reality, it is to engage fully with the complexity of existence, with the unknowable vastness of time, and with the fragile persistence of memory. The moon landing, iconic and monumental, becomes not only an event to study, but a mirror reflecting the deeper truths of our planet, our cognition, and the civilizations, real or imagined, that may have preceded us. In closing, we confront a philosophical tension. The more we seek certainty, the more we recognize its limits. The stories of Earth's erased histories and the impossible details of space travel converge to teach a singular lesson. Knowledge is provisional, evidence is mediated, and the human spirit thrives not in certainty, but in the pursuit of understanding. What lies beyond the reach of memory, both on Earth and in the stars, is not unknowable forever. It is an invitation to remain curious, reflective, and vigilant in our exploration of existence. Share this journey with others, subscribe for more explorations into the unknown, and continue to question what we believe about history, memory, and the hidden civilizations that may have preceded us. In doing so, we honor the paradox of proof and the enduring mystery of time itself.